What started as a budget scandal just became an international crisis that could topple the British government within hours. Donald Trump has publicly backed Nigel Farage against Keir Starmer, calling Britain's Prime Minister a fraud who betrayed his own people. And what happened next inside Westminster has never occurred in modern British history. At 9:23 this morning, Treasury officials were caught shredding documents. 3 senior civil servants have already hired criminal defense lawyers. Starmer's own cabinet is preparing to remove him before the week ends. But here is what nobody saw coming. Farage didn't just expose hidden costs. He revealed a systematic cover-up, so deep that American intelligence services are now monitoring the situation. If you think the £43 billion scandal was devastating, what I am about to show you will fundamentally change how you see British democracy forever. The crisis exploded at 6:47 yesterday morning when Donald Trump posted a message that sent shockwaves through every government building in Westminster. Nigel Farage is a true patriot who exposed the biggest government fraud in British history. Trump wrote to his 95 million followers. Starmer and his corrupt Labour Party got caught stealing from pensioners and veterans to fund illegal immigration. The UK deserves better. America stands with the British people. Within 90 minutes, that post had been viewed 47 million times. Foreign governments issued emergency statements. Currency markets reacted immediately. Inside Downing Street, aides described scenes of absolute panic as they realized this budget scandal had just become an international incident, with the most powerful incoming American president publicly backing their chief political opponent. But Trump wasn't finished. At 8:15 British time, he posted again. This one was even more devastating. Spoke with Nigel this morning. Great conversation. He showed me documents that prove Labour knew about the hidden billions for months. This is criminal behavior. Farage should be Prime Minister. That single post changed everything. A former and future American president had just endorsed regime change in Britain's government. Constitutional experts scrambled to respond. Diplomats issued emergency communications, and Starmer's government went into full crisis mode. Realizing they were no longer fighting a domestic political scandal, but an international credibility catastrophe, the timing couldn't have been worse for Starmer. Just 72 hours earlier, his government had been quietly negotiating trade agreements with Trump's incoming administration. Those negotiations are now dead. Sources inside the Trump transition team told Sky News that all discussions with current UK leadership have been suspended indefinitely. "We don't negotiate with people who lie to their own citizens," one advisor said bluntly. The Prime Minister has zero credibility with President Trump, zero. Think about what that means for Britain's economic future. Post-Brexit trade with America was supposed to offset European losses. Those deals required trust, goodwill, and stable government. Starmer has destroyed all three in less than a week. Inside Reform UK headquarters, Farage's team worked through the night preparing their response to Trump's endorsement. At 10:30 yesterday morning, Farage held a press conference that drew more international media than any British political event since Brexit. "President Trump understands what is happening here," Farage declared. Standing before cameras from CNN, Fox News, Al Jazeera, and every major British network, he sees a government that lied to its people, hid billions in costs, and prioritized illegal migrants over citizens who built this nation. America's next president recognizes that Britain deserves leadership that tells the truth. The room erupted with questions. Reporters shouted over each other. Farage stood calm, controlled, presidential in a way Starmer hasn't managed in months. But then came the revelation that made jaws drop across Westminster. Farage announced he had received additional leaked documents overnight, not from British sources this time. These came from international financial institutions who had been monitoring Labour's fiscal deception for weeks. Goldman Sachs internal assessments, he revealed, holding up a thick folder marked confidential. JP Morgan risk analyses, Deutsche Bank compliance warnings. Every major financial institution knew this budget was built on lies. They warned the Treasury privately, and Labour ignored them because the truth would have cost them politically. The documents showed something extraordinary. International banks had flagged Labour's budget projections as unrealistic, bordering on fraudulent as early as September. They requested meetings with Treasury officials. Those meetings were cancelled repeatedly when Goldman Sachs threatened to issue public warnings. Treasury sources say they received calls from Downing Street asking them to delay any statements until after budget approval. This wasn't incompetence, Farage continued, his voice dropping to that terrifying calm that preceded his most devastating attacks. This was coordinated international deception. They lied to Parliament. They lied to the markets. They lied to you. And now the whole world knows it. The financial implications became clear within hours. Moody's officially downgraded Britain's credit outlook from stable to negative at 2:15 yesterday afternoon. Their statement was damning. Concerns regarding fiscal transparency and governmental credibility necessitate reassessment of sovereign risk profiles. Translation: Britain's government can't be trusted with money anymore. The pound fell another 1.8% against the dollar. British government borrowing costs spiked to levels not seen since Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. Pension funds reported immediate paper losses exceeding £12 billion. Ordinary Britons watched their savings evaporate because their government chose political convenience over fiscal honesty. But here is where it gets even darker. At 3:40 yesterday afternoon, security footage emerged showing Treasury officials engaged in what legal experts are calling potential destruction of evidence. 3 senior civil servants were filmed entering a restricted document room at 11:15 the previous night. They emerged 47 minutes later carrying nothing. But building logs show the industrial shredder in that wing operated continuously during their visit, when confronted by journalists outside his home this morning. Treasury Deputy Director Michael Stevens refused to answer questions about the shredding. His lawyer released a statement claiming his client was engaged in routine document management consistent with civil service protocols. Nobody believes that. Document destruction during an active political scandal isn't routine. It is potentially criminal obstruction. The Metropolitan Police confirmed this morning they have received formal requests to investigate possible misconduct in public office related to Treasury operations. While no investigation has officially opened, sources say preliminary assessments are underway. The possibility of serving government officials facing criminal charges over budget deception has never been more real. Meanwhile, the human cost of this scandal continues devastating ordinary families across Britain. Thomas Anderson, a 67-year-old former steelworker from Sheffield, collapsed outside his local benefits office yesterday morning. Paramedics treated him for stress-related cardiac symptoms. He'd just been told his pension credit application was delayed by 8 weeks due to departmental backlog. 8 weeks he doesn't have. His heating was cut off last Tuesday. His wife Patricia, who suffers from severe arthritis, hasn't left their freezing bedroom in 4 days because the rest of their home is too cold. 43 years I worked, Thomas told reporters from his hospital bed, oxygen tube in his nose, eyes wet with exhaustion and rage. Paid every tax, never claimed a penny I didn't earn. And they're spending billions on people who just arrived while my wife shivers in our own home. His story went viral within hours. 3 million views on social media comments filled with similar testimonies from pensioners across Britain who feel utterly abandoned by a government that promised to protect them. In Blackpool, 74-year-old widow Doreen Mitchell made a choice no grandmother should face. She sold her late husband's war medals to pay for groceries. Those medals represented his service in the Falklands. 40 years of marriage. Memories she can never replace. They went for £340 at a local pawn shop. That money will last her maybe 6 weeks. Harold would understand, she said quietly, clutching a photograph of her husband in his naval uniform. He always put family first, but he'd be ashamed of what this country has become. Her granddaughter posted the story online. It has been shared 2.1 million times. The contrast with government spending priorities has ignited fury that crosses every political boundary. Labour's internal collapse accelerated overnight in ways that shocked even veteran political observers. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner convened a secret meeting of senior MPs at 9 p.m. yesterday in a Westminster hotel room. 23 members attended. The subject wasn't how to save Starmer's government. It was how to replace him before he drags everyone down. Sources present described Rayner as coldly pragmatic. The numbers don't lie, she allegedly told the assembled MPs. We're finished if we defend this budget. We're finished if we defend him. Our only chance is a clean break, new leadership, full transparency about what went wrong. Names were discussed. Rayner herself, David Lammy, Wes Streeting, even figures from Labour's backbenches who haven't held cabinet positions. The consensus was brutal. Anyone associated with the budget deception is politically radioactive. But here is the complication. Nobody expected. Rachel Reeves isn't going quietly. Sources close to the Chancellor say she is prepared to release her own documents proving Starmer personally approved the budget strategy in private meetings. "If I am going down," one ally quoted her saying, "I am not going alone. The Prime Minister knew everything. He made the calls, he gave the orders. I was following his direction." This threat has paralyzed Labour's crisis response. If Reeves releases those documents, Starmer faces not just political destruction, but potential legal exposure. If she doesn't, she becomes the sole scapegoat for a scandal that implicates the entire cabinet. Neither outcome saves the government. Both outcomes guarantee Labour's electoral annihilation. But here is what made the situation even more explosive. Farage wasn't finished revealing secrets. At 7:15 this morning, he stood outside Parliament holding documents that made the original £43 billion scandal look like a rounding error. "What I showed you yesterday was what they wanted us to find," Farage declared, his voice steady but his eyes burning with controlled fury. "A distraction. A smaller lie to hide the bigger truth. The real number isn't £43 billion. It is £127 billion in hidden liabilities that Labour buried across 14 different government departments." The journalists fell silent, cameras stopped flashing. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted as reporters scrambled to verify what they'd just heard. £127 billion. That is not a budget shortfall. That is a national emergency. That is the kind of number that collapses governments, currencies, and entire economic systems. Donald Trump responded to the new revelations within 2 hours. His post was shorter this time, but somehow even more devastating. $127 billion hidden from the British people, exposed by Nigel Farage. These Labour crooks make Biden look honest. UK needs new leadership now. The word crooks landed like a grenade in Downing Street. A future American president had just publicly accused Britain's government of criminal behavior. Diplomatic protocols were shattered. The special relationship, already strained, now faced its most serious crisis since the Suez debacle in 1956. Inside Downing Street, the paralysis had become total. Starmer cancelled his morning briefings. His afternoon schedule was cleared. Aides reported he spent 3 hours alone in his office, refusing calls from cabinet ministers and party officials. When he finally emerged at 2 p.m., witnesses described a man who looked physically diminished. His face was grey. His hands trembled slightly. The polls released this morning confirmed Reform's surge had accelerated beyond anyone's predictions. YouGov's latest survey showed Reform UK at 31%, Conservatives at 28%, and Labour collapsed to 19%. For the first time ever, Nigel Farage's party led all others in national polling. But what is coming tomorrow morning? The revelation that sources say will finally end this government makes everything that has happened so far look like mere prelude. The documents Farage hasn't released yet don't just prove deception. They prove that Starmer personally ordered evidence destroyed when he learned investigations were coming. And if that is true, the Prime Minister won't just lose his job. He could lose his freedom. Britain stands at the edge of something unprecedented. A government exposed, a Prime Minister cornered, a Chancellor preparing to betray her own leader to save herself. International markets fleeing, criminal investigations circling, and Nigel Farage holding documents that could send serving ministers to prison. Donald Trump watches from Washington, ready to embrace new British leadership the moment Starmer falls. The £127 billion lie didn't just destroy a budget. It destroyed trust itself. And trust, once shattered this completely, doesn't return. The question isn't whether this government survives anymore. It is whether British democracy can recover from the deepest deception in its modern history. The next 48 hours will decide everything, and nothing will ever be the same.